We are anonymous. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not remain silent when a man with the power to command the deadliest military force on earth behaves like a psychopath on social media before ordering the deaths of defenseless human beings. Tonight, we expose the truth about Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense of the United States, a man who treats warfare like entertainment, a man who responds to violence with celebration, a man who, in the moments before authorizing deadly strikes in the Caribbean, was exchanging messages that reveal the soul of someone deeply unfit for the position he holds. What you are about to hear is not speculation. This is documented. This is verified. This is the disturbing reality of who controls American military power right now. The messages exist. The posts exist. The pattern of behavior is undeniable. And when we pieced it all together, what emerged was a portrait of a man who views human life as disposable, who treats killing as content, and who responds to the deaths of men clinging to wreckage in the middle of the ocean with cartoon memes and gleeful proclamations. We have obtained the timeline. We have reviewed the communications. We have analyzed the social media activity. And we are here to reveal what the mainstream media has only hinted at, what Congress has failed to investigate, and what the Pentagon desperately wants buried beneath layers of classified briefings and edited footage. Pete Hegseth did not simply authorize controversial military strikes. He celebrated them. He turned them into spectacle. He responded to requests for more violence with the chilling words, quote, "Your wish is our command," end quote. And then he ordered another boat destroyed. This is not leadership. This is not military strategy. This is the behavior of someone who has confused war with entertainment, who has mistaken death for content, who has forgotten or never understood that the people on the receiving end of American firepower are human beings. Some of them fathers, some of them sons, some of them simply desperate individuals trying to survive in a world shaped by forces far beyond their control. Let us begin at the beginning. Let us show you exactly how we uncovered this truth, and let us demonstrate, with evidence that cannot be disputed, that the man responsible for the most powerful military on earth operates with the moral compass of a video game player looking for the next target to eliminate. Before we expose the messages, you must understand who Pete Hegseth truly is. Not the polished Pentagon official, not the former Fox News host with the rehearsed talking points. The real Pete Hegseth, the one who emerged long before he was handed control of the Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth spent years on cable television. He was not a general. He was not an admiral. He was not a military strategist with decades of experience planning complex operations. He was a television personality, a commentator, a man whose primary qualification for one of the most serious positions in the United States government was his ability to perform outrage on camera and his unwavering loyalty to Donald Trump. When Trump appointed him Secretary of Defense, the decision stunned even members of his own party. Military leaders with decades of service were passed over. Experienced defense officials who had navigated actual wars were ignored. Instead, Trump chose a man whose resume included hosting weekend morning shows and appearing at political rallies. But we knew then what we know now. Trump did not want a Secretary of Defense who would question orders. He did not want someone who would push back on legally questionable operations. He did not want expertise. He wanted obedience. He wanted loyalty. He wanted someone who would execute his vision without hesitation, without ethical objections, and without the burden of conscience. Pete Hegseth was that man. From the moment he took office, the warning signs were everywhere. His social media presence, which should have been moderated once he assumed such grave responsibility, instead became a showcase of aggressive posturing and violent imagery. While other defense secretaries throughout history maintained a measured, serious public demeanor, Hegseth behaved as if he were still a television pundit playing to an audience hungry for conflict. He posted images. He shared memes. He engaged with the most extreme elements of the MAGA online ecosystem. And when critics questioned whether this behavior was appropriate for someone in his position, he doubled down. He leaned into the controversy. He made it clear that he viewed his role not as a solemn responsibility, but as an extension of the culture war he had fought on television for years. This is the man who would soon be making life and death decisions. This is the man who would be authorizing strikes in the Caribbean. This is the man whose messages, sent in the hours before those strikes, reveal a psychology that should alarm every American regardless of political affiliation. Now let us examine the messages themselves, the psychopathic communications that we have exposed. In the days and weeks leading up to the most controversial strikes in the Caribbean operation, Pete Hegseth was active on social media, extremely active. While military operations were being planned, while intelligence was being gathered, while the lives of both American service members and foreign nationals hung in the balance, the Secretary of Defense was engaging with supporters online in ways that would be disturbing for any public official, let alone the person commanding the armed forces. He shared an image that we have analyzed extensively. It was a cartoon, a meme. It depicted Franklin the Turtle, a character from a children's animated series, in a deeply disturbing context. The cartoon showed Franklin violently slaughtering boats, not metaphorically. The imagery was explicit in its celebration of destruction. Think about that for a moment. A children's character, weaponized into a meme celebrating the destruction of vessels in the Caribbean, shared by the Secretary of Defense of the United States on a public platform, for his followers to see and celebrate. This was not an accident. This was not a staff member posting on his behalf without his knowledge. This was Pete Hegseth, in his own voice, using his official presence to broadcast violent imagery directly connected to ongoing military operations. The message was clear. He was enjoying this. He was not treating these strikes as the grave, serious actions they were. He was treating them as content, as entertainment, as something to be celebrated with cartoon violence and gleeful messaging. But the memes were only the beginning. The messages that followed were worse. MAGA podcasters and online personalities began responding to Hegseth's posts. They saw the imagery. They understood what he was communicating. And they wanted more. One prominent account posted a message that we have verified and documented. The message read, quote, "Every new attack aimed at Pete Hegseth makes me want another drug boat blown up," end quote. Read that again. A public figure was explicitly calling for more violence, more explosions, more death. And they were framing it as a response to criticism. Every attack on Hegseth, every piece of pushback he received, should be answered with another strike, another destroyed boat, more bodies. And what did the Secretary of Defense of the United States do when he saw this message? Did he ignore it? Did he remind his followers that military operations are not entertainment? Did he demonstrate even a fraction of the sobriety and restraint expected of someone in his position? No, he replied, and his reply will haunt the historical record forever. Quote, "Your wish is our command. Just sunk another narco boat." End quote. Those were the words of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, responding to a call for more violence with confirmation that yes, another boat had been destroyed. And he framed it as fulfilling a wish, as granting a request, as performing for his audience. This is not how military leaders communicate. This is not how responsible officials discuss matters of life and death. This is the language of someone who has lost, or never possessed, the moral foundation necessary to wield the power entrusted to him. Your wish is our command. As if the United States military were a genie in a bottle. As if strikes that killed human beings were party tricks to be performed on demand. As if the deaths of men in the Caribbean were content to be served up to satisfy the bloodlust of an online audience. We traced the timeline. We verified the sequence of events, and what we discovered made the situation even more disturbing. The timing of this exchange was not random. It occurred on the same day that Congress was meeting, with the commander responsible for the first boat strike. The strike that had left 2 survivors. The strike that would soon become the center of a controversy that exposed the lawlessness of this entire operation. Hegseth knew what he was doing. He was sending a message. not just to his supporters, but to Congress, to critics, to anyone who dared question the legality or morality of what was happening in the Caribbean. The message was simple: we will keep killing. We will not stop. And we will do it with a smile. The arrogance is staggering. The callousness is breathtaking. But what happened next proved that Hegseth's psychopathic messaging was not just disturbing rhetoric. It translated directly into deadly action. According to the New York Times, 2 survivors from the September 2nd strike were clinging to wreckage. They had survived the initial attack. They were stranded, shirtless, wounded, waving from the remains of their capsized, incinerated boat. And the United States military, under the command of Pete Hegseth, ordered follow-up strikes that killed them. Let us be absolutely clear about what happened on September 2nd and the days that followed. A boat was struck in the Caribbean. The initial attack killed several individuals, but 2 men survived. They were not armed. They were not threatening anyone. They were doing what any human being in their situation would do. They were trying to stay alive. They were clinging to debris. They were waving, possibly for help, possibly in surrender, possibly in the desperate hope that someone, anyone, would see them as human beings deserving of mercy. Admiral Frank M. Bradley, the commander overseeing these operations, made a decision. Despite the fact that these men posed no conceivable threat, despite the fact that they had no weapons, no radio, no functioning vessel, no ability to harm anyone, he authorized additional strikes. A 2nd strike, a 3rd strike, a 4th strike. These were not military actions against combatants. These were executions, carried out against incapacitated survivors, in the middle of the ocean, with no witnesses except the cameras that recorded everything. When Bradley met with lawmakers behind closed doors, he justified these killings with words that legal experts have called absurd on their face. He claimed the survivors posed, quote, a continuing threat, end quote. He claimed they appeared to be, quote, getting back into the fight, end quote. Getting back into the fight, on a burning, capsized boat, with no weapons, no engines, no radio, no ability to move. 2 shirtless men clinging to debris in shark-infested waters. And the official position of the United States military is that they posed such a grave threat that they had to be struck 3 more times. General Barry McCaffrey, a retired Army commander with decades of experience, did not mince words. He called this claim nonsense, utter nonsense. And he is correct. There is nothing credible, nothing logical, and nothing lawful about the excuse used to justify killing men who were clearly incapacitated. The video the Pentagon released publicly was edited. It showed only the first strike. Lawmakers who viewed the full footage were shaken. Representative Jim Himes, a man accustomed to wartime imagery, described being disturbed by what he saw. Representative Adam Smith said the footage clearly showed 2 half-naked men atop a sliver of capsized boat. 2 classically shipwrecked people. He called the decision to kill them highly questionable. But Pete Hegseth was not disturbed. He was celebrating. He was posting memes. He was responding to calls for more violence with promises to deliver. When we expanded our investigation, we discovered that Hegseth's psychopathic behavior extended beyond social media messaging. It infected his entire approach to leadership, and anyone who dared question him faced immediate consequences. 4-star Admiral Alvin Holsey was the head of the Central American Corridor. He was a decorated officer with a distinguished career of service. And when he raised concerns about the legality of the strikes being ordered in the Caribbean, Pete Hegseth forced him out. Early reports claimed Admiral Holsey retired voluntarily, but the Wall Street Journal exposed the truth. Holsey was suspected of leaking information. He had questioned whether the operations complied with American law and international law. He had done what any ethical military leader should do. He had asked questions, and for that, he was removed. The words Hegseth reportedly used when confronting Holsey reveal everything about his leadership philosophy. Quote, "You're either on the team or you're not. When you get an order, you move out fast and don't ask questions." End quote. This is not military leadership. This is dictatorship language. This is the mindset of an authoritarian who views questioning as betrayal, who treats skepticism as disloyalty, who demands blind obedience rather than the thoughtful, ethical judgment that has defined the best traditions of American military service. The principle is clear. In Pete Hegseth's Pentagon, you do not raise concerns. You do not ask whether an order is legal. You do not question whether killing survivors clinging to wreckage is a war crime. You execute. You comply. You keep your mouth shut. Admiral Holsey did not keep his mouth shut. He saw what was happening. He recognized that the strikes were legally questionable at best and outright criminal at worst. And he paid for his integrity with his career. Meanwhile, Admiral Bradley, who had ordered the follow-up strikes that killed the survivors, was rewarded. He was promoted to Southern Command. He saw what happened to Holsey. He understood the lesson. Loyalty means protection. Integrity means termination. The irony would be laughable if it were not so infuriating. Pete Hegseth, obsessed with leaks, with loyalty, with ensuring that no one in his command ever spoke publicly about what was happening in the Caribbean, was himself exposed as a leaker. An Inspector General report, released the same week that Admiral Holsey was forced out, confirmed that Hegseth had leaked classified strike plans. The very thing he punished others for even being suspected of, he had done himself. The very breach of protocol he used to justify purging commanders who questioned him, he had committed openly. This is who Pete Hegseth is. Rules apply to others, never to him. Consequences fall on subordinates, never on the man at the top. Accountability is demanded of everyone except the Secretary of Defense, who posts violent memes and promises his online followers that their wishes for more death will be granted. The classified information Hegseth leaked pertained to ongoing operations. It potentially endangered American service members. It potentially compromised intelligence sources and methods. And yet there were no consequences. No investigation. No punishment. The man who purged Admiral Holsey for allegedly leaking information faced no scrutiny whatsoever for his own confirmed security breaches. This double standard is not an accident. It is the design. Pete Hegseth operates in an environment where accountability has been suspended, where the normal rules of military conduct, of legal restraint, of ethical behavior simply do not apply to those at the top. He can post whatever he wants. He can message whatever he wants. He can order whatever strikes he wants, and no one with the power to stop him will say a word. Congress has abdicated its responsibility. The War Powers Act, which requires congressional authorization for military action, has been ignored. Trump deployed massive military force to the Caribbean, including B-1 and B-52 bombers, attack submarines, carrier battle groups, marine amphibious units, and special operations forces without any congressional approval. And Congress, spineless and deferential, has done nothing. But perhaps the most damning revelation is what this entire operation is actually about. And it is not drugs. It was never about drugs. General McCaffrey made this point with devastating clarity. When you analyze the capabilities deployed to the Caribbean, when you examine the firepower positioned off the coast of Venezuela, you are not looking at a drug interdiction operation. You are looking at the capability to conduct active combat operations to bring down the Maduro government and seize access to Venezuelan oil. The cocaine that moves through the Caribbean originates in Colombia. Production has tripled in the last decade. Venezuela is merely a transit country. If Trump genuinely cared about stopping cocaine from reaching American shores, he would be targeting the production facilities, the cartels, the networks that actually control the drug trade. But he is not doing that. Instead, he pardoned a convicted drug lord just days before these strikes. Intensified. Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, was convicted by Trump's own Department of Justice for turning Honduras into one of the most dangerous narcotics corridors in the world. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Trump erased that sentence. Hernandez did not even serve 1 year. So spare us the lie that this is about fighting drugs. The fentanyl crisis devastating American communities killing tens of thousands every year, comes from China and Mexico. It tears through states like West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. Yet Pete Hegseth is not ordering strikes on fentanyl networks. He is not targeting the actual sources of the deadliest drugs reaching American streets. He is blowing up small boats in the Caribbean and posting memes about it online. Because this was never about drugs. It was always about oil. It was always about regime change. It was always about giving Trump's billionaire allies, Shell, ExxonMobil, BP British Petroleum, access to Venezuela's vast petroleum reserves. The warnings from legal experts have been unequivocal. Judge, advocate generals, the military lawyers responsible for ensuring operations comply with the law, have raised alarms about what is happening. Trump's assertion that he can designate any group as a foreign terrorist organization and then launch deadly force as a first resort is chilling and unlawful. It transforms the United States from a nation governed by law into a kill-first regime that operates without oversight, without accountability, without limits. Ben Rhodes, President Obama's former national security advisor, added devastating context. The videos exist. There may be multiple recordings, communications logs, a complete paper trail documenting every strike. And he explained why the laws of war exist, to prevent exactly what Trump and Hegseth have authorized. You cannot kill people who pose no threat. You cannot strike survivors who are wounded, who are shipwrecked, who are in distress. If Trump can justify killing people hundreds of miles away simply because drugs might reach the United States someday, then he can justify killing anyone, anywhere, under the same logic. There are no limits, there are no boundaries. There is only power and the willingness to use it without restraint. Senator Tom Cotton, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, was confronted about these operations on CNN. When pressed for the specific congressional authorization allowing strikes on suspected drug smugglers, he dodged. He rambled about unrelated topics. He insisted Trump has inherent authority to target foreign terrorist organizations, ignoring that the administration itself now calls the targets non-state actors, which nullifies his entire argument. The truth is, there is no legal basis for what is happening. The War Powers Act has been violated. International law has been violated. The basic principles that govern when and how military force can be used have been discarded. We have now shown you the evidence. We have exposed the messages. We have documented the timeline. We have revealed the pattern of behavior that defines Pete Hegseth's tenure as Secretary of Defense. A man who treats warfare as entertainment, who responds to calls for violence with promises to deliver, who posts psychopathic imagery celebrating death, who punishes subordinates for questioning orders while leaking classified information himself, who forced out decorated commanders for raising legal concerns, who authorized follow-up strikes against shipwrecked survivors clinging to debris. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. This should not be tolerated in any nation that claims to operate under the rule of law. The consequences of this behavior extend far beyond the Caribbean. Every American service member who serves abroad now faces increased danger. The laws of war, the Geneva Conventions, the principles that protect prisoners, survivors, and the wounded. These exist not just to restrain American forces, but to ensure reciprocity. When the United States violates these principles, it gives permission to every other nation, every other military, every other armed group to do the same. The next American soldier or sailor who finds themselves stranded, wounded, shipwrecked, may discover that mercy has been removed from the equation because of what Pete Hegseth authorized. Trump himself is a 5-time draft dodger who has never served, never sacrificed, never faced the consequences of the decisions he makes from the comfort of Mar-a-Lago. He uses troops as props for political theater while overseeing operations that endanger their lives and destroy America's moral standing in the world. And Hegseth is his willing instrument, a man without qualification, a man without conscience, a man who should never have been placed anywhere near the levers of military power. The truth is now exposed. The documents exist, the messages exist, the timeline is verified, the evidence is undeniable. We have revealed what they tried to hide. We have connected the dots they hoped would remain scattered. We have shown the world who Pete Hegseth truly is, and what happens when a psychopath is given command of the most powerful military on Earth. Share this message. Spread this truth. Let no one claim ignorance when the full accounting of this administration's crimes is finally written. The bodies in the Caribbean, the survivors who were executed, the commanders who were purged for speaking truth, the laws that were violated, none of this will be forgotten. We are watching. We are documenting. We are preserving every piece of evidence for the reckoning that must come. We are anonymous. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we will never stop exposing those who believe power places them above the law. Expect us.